Cue the cheesy podcast music.
Welcome to MegaFest, where we don't just manifest, we MegaFest. I'm your host, Megs Malloy. I'm creating a community of silly and soulful working moms who are mostly happy, but know they're capable of more. More self-love, more self-esteem, more self-trust, more calm, joy, natural highs, more magic in the world, and more laughter. Each week, me and my guests will bring you tips and tricks on how to make the most of your one precious life. And we're going to make them effective and efficient because ain't nobody got time for that. I believe in you. I see the light in you. I want you to shine your light. I want you to become all that you're capable of. So let's hang out. Let's MegaFest together. I just felt like we needed to start today's episode with a couple rounds of toots because that always makes me feel better. And, you know, I'm not feeling bad per se. I just am a little tired. And I want you to know that that's okay. It's all okay. I can show up tired. And you know what? I bet you by the end of this episode, I'm going to be feeling fabulous. Fucking fabulous. Because I am here to share my unapologetic adulation for this new program I'm doing called Positive Intelligence, also known as PQ, like IQ, but PQ. And I am just such a fan of this program because I feel like for the last 3 years, or even my entire life, I've been afflicted by an overactive inner critic. And really, what do we do with our inner critic? Do you talk back to it? Do you tell it to fuck off? Do you make friends with it? It plagued me for many years as to what to do with my inner critic. I've read lots of books on it, and we'll go into that. But when the student is ready, the teacher appeared, and here we are with PQ. I can't wait to share it with you. And this is probably going to be the first of several episodes on the topic as I go through the program and learn about it and have my own experiences with it. I think it will be very beneficial to you because it has been so beneficial to me. How about that adulation, huh? So on any given day, any given moment, your inner critic is possibly running in the background of your brain, telling you what you can and can't do, verbally lashing you for screwing up, telling you how stupid you are, how ugly, how fat. You know, it's a real meanie, isn't it? Sometimes that voice in your head. And especially when you're trying to do something that you've never done before, like start a podcast, start a business, put yourself out there. This is like a mecca for an inner critic. It's like, oh, you want to try and do something? Okay, well, let me show you how mean I can be. Let me just keep you in your place. I mean, if you think of it from an ego point of view, your inner critic is kind of keeping you safe, right? And that is a natural mammalian sort of reaction to venturing outside of the cave. Is like, oh no, don't go too far, let me keep you safe. But that inner critic always finds a way to creep out or take over. There's been many stages in my journey of figuring out this whole inner critic thing. I listened to Don Miguel Ruiz Jr.'s book called The Mastery of Self. And this is a grandson of, or a son, or somehow related to the guy who wrote the Four Agreements. And it was so good. It taught me that a lot of the story that goes on in our head and the way that we think we should be comes from our upbringing, which is like, no duh, Megan. But you know what? Sometimes you just need to hear it from someone else. that judge inside your head is sometimes something that you've learned. It can be a combination of parents or some sort of bully. It's keeping you in line with the things that you've learned the way that you should be. Next, I got a recommendation from our very own Matthew Anderson, who was a guest on MegaFest. And when I got back in touch with him, I said, "Hey, Matthew, is there a book that you really recommend that made a difference in your personal development?" And he said, "The Untethered Soul." And don't you know, if you've listened to MegaFest, this book changed my friggin' life. So Untethered Soul really just deconstructed what's happening in your head. So basically, you are a spiritual being, a soul inside your body, a human body. Your soul is witnessing your 5 senses, interpreting the world around you through the lens of the stories you've learned and society's stories, and all the stories and your 5 senses are trying to make sense of the outside world. And your soul is witnessing this happening. So you don't have to listen to anything that your head tells you. And you really can be a guide to that unending monologue that's happening. Over the last 3 years, I've been working on certain things that I found to be limiting to my peace of mind and also my productivity in my life. Like things like setting emotional boundaries and not being so reactive. Being aware of my inner people pleaser, being aware of my inner victim, having a Shiro mindset. So knowing all these things, reading these books, then I get an invitation from Bear Man, episode 4, who had recently completed a program called PQ, Positive Intelligence. And she's like, "Megan, this is the best thing." And I always take a recommendation from Bera. So I missed the opportunity to be in a cohort with her, but it's so interesting to sign up now and be doing it and have her as a sounding board, be like, "Did you think this?" And she's like, "Yeah, I thought that." And what were your impressions of the course? And it has been so interesting. So what is PQ? So this guy, Shirzad, who I'll link all the things in the show notes, he's the facilitator, and he has created this system of getting in touch with your judge and dismantling the hold that the judge has on you and turning it into what he calls a sage, which is the wise inner knowing, using your inner criticisms and softening them and turning them into guidance and compassionate and curious guides. Along with the judge, we have, I think there's 9 what he calls saboteurs. And these saboteurs are like little henchmen of the judge. And they are the coping mechanisms that we've learned how to get love over the years. So mine are, you guessed it, people pleasing, playing the victim, and then avoider is really high on my list, which is like just avoiding all unpleasant feelings. Any task associated with unpleasant feelings, I'm out. And also, I think I think of these two as like the twins in The Shining, like, those 2 little girls who were dressed like scary dolls. Avoider and then restlessness. So that's like not being able to focus on one task and being like a squirrel and you're just, distracted. But there are so many saboteurs. There's like hyperachiever, there's stickler, there's hypervigilant. I can outline these in the show notes for you, but it's just fascinating to see how we all have at least one, and they sort of rank from like highest to lowest. In the beginning of the program, you start to get familiar with your judge. Like anything else, awareness is going to be the first step in change, right? We have to be aware of when the judge is coming into play, what thoughts that's creating and what feelings that's creating. And then, of course, we have to have an intention to change And that is like the engine that keeps us doing our daily practices. In the beginning of the program, you take a whole week and you really focus on being aware of when your judge is coming into your head. And it can be a judge of yourself, of course, we've talked about that, but also a judge of others and a judge of circumstances, like this situation is bad or it's detrimental or whatever you might be saying. It really breaks it down so that you can have a fishing net and you or like a spotlight, you can point out when your brain is doing these things. So he says that the judge can be usually either super mean, like Gollum, like waiting in the shadows for you, and then just like so mean and horrible to you, and like you would never talk to anybody else like that, but somehow it's okay in your own head. And then if you're like me, another type of judge is like the mean girl. Like it just is like, ugh, you're pathetic. That's just lame. Why did you do that? Da, 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 da. And that's the kind of judge that I have, whether I've worked on it and it's gone from really mean to mean girl, or if it's gone from like gangsta to like mean girl on the playground, or if that's just how it always was. But, you know, I've noticed that my mean girl could be running a little bit in the background. You know, when you first start to notice it, it might be at a 10. It might be so in your face and you are super aware of it. Or if you're like me, you've done a lot of the inner work, you've focused a lot on trying to minimize that inner critic. So, but it's still there. It never goes away. So instead of a 10, it might be a 1, but it's there. But the thing is that you can turn it into a sage, because we're always going to be trying to give ourselves this feedback. Like, for example, the other day, I saw a dad at preschool pickup who I hadn't seen in a long time, but I'm super fond of him. I think his name is Michael, or maybe he goes by Mike, but I didn't want to say either name because I didn't want to be wrong and like insult him that I would be wrong. And usually I just ask people, I'm like, tell me your name again. But I didn't, and then it was too late. Maybe a few years ago, I might have been, man, Megan, you fucked that up. That was ridiculous. You should have known his name. You should have done this, whatever. But this time I was just like, okay, well, noted. I could have done that different. And that is the sage talking, right? And in this PQ program, it's not just about the awareness. And obviously you have an intention to change because you're in the program, but it's also about this practice, the daily practice of doing what he calls PQ reps. And he thinks of it like the gym, right? You got to work these muscles to return to the present, because we have a tendency when our judge is in full force, we're either in past or we're in future. And that ping pong that happens in our head of the past and the future, it's rough, man. It's it's like playing ping pong with a shot put. It's horrible. To return to the present, there are a couple ways you can do a PQ rep. The thing I love about it is that it only takes 2 minutes, because ain't nobody got time for nothing. I got time for nothing. But 2 minutes, meh. I could do 2 minutes. I could sit down for 2 minutes and either focus on my breath, focus on touch. And he does this practice of rubbing 2 fingers together. And sometimes it's kind of cool if you bring together 2 fingers that don't normally meet and they have a chance to mingle. And it creates this amazing tingling sensation. So try that. Or you could focus on sound, so just closing your eyes and, you know, being aware of all the sounds that you hear around you, something different, the farthest away sound you can hear, the closest sound you can hear, and then the sound of your own body breathing that good oxygen. And then, of course, If you are not in a place where you can close your eyes, you can always focus on what do you see, and really looking at things with such great detail and care and precision that you are immediately brought back to the present. All right, so obviously I have a lot to say about this program. So much adulation for the PQ program. It's so great, and I hope to be bringing you more information, more practices, more ways you can incorporate this into your life. And thank you so much for listening. I say it every time, but I really am so grateful for you. And I'm also grateful that this orchid behind me has lasted since February. It's really trying to hang on, and let's just give it some love and praise that it deserves. For even as a wilty orchid, it still is such a thing of beauty. All right, Megafesters, remember to stay curious. Have so much compassion for yourself. If you can't have compassion for yourself, pretend like you're talking to the mail carrier and just adulate the fuck out of that one. And remember that life is short. We have one precious life. And I hope you are not just manifesting, but you are megafesting the life that you want.